call meeting to order of the Board of Education for Lincoln Way Community High School District 210, Thursday, March 1st, 2018. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Glatz? Ms. Janice Doyle? Here. Mr. Luchetti? Mr. Lulo?
Here.
Mr. Janik?
Here.
Mr. Kostick? Mr. Kirby?
Here. One. All right, we have public comment. We have 3 people signed up. First one is Mary Ellen Holbert.
Good evening, Administration, School Board. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. My name is Mary Ellen Talbert, and I'm a parent in the community. I have one student who's graduated last year from West, and I have a senior and a sophomore at West right now. My reason for speaking tonight was I had a conversation with a parent, a mutual West parent, who informed me that there was discussion during an advisory council or committee meeting on February 12th. And one of the subjects that came up was the possibility of removing restrictions of cell phone usage in the hallways during passing periods and in the classrooms. I don't have a personal opinion on this matter as of yet, as I'm currently just doing some research into it. But my concerns are whether or not there is a process that the board is going to go through before taking a vote on this, and for the consideration of what educational purposes removing cell phone restrictions in the hallways would serve, what educational purposes removing cell phone restrictions in the classroom would serve. What does existing research tell us about adolescent development, physical, neurological, intellectual, social, emotional, and what would be the potential impact of removing cell phone restrictions on student success, both academically and socially? What does existing research say about the impact of cell phone use in school, on test scores, cheating, privacy, bullying, physical conflict, absenteeism, student engagement, both socially and academically? What might be the unintended negative outcomes? What controls and restrictions can be realistically enforced if cell phone use is allowed in hallways and classrooms? Will a date be set if you decide to remove these restrictions? Will the date be set to revisit, discuss, and consider the impact? And if so, how will you measure the impact of removing these restrictions, both in the hallways and in the classroom? Will you look at data such as test scores, absenteeism, conflict, fights, reports of bullying, crime, or would it be more qualitative things like social engagement, student participation, etc.? I think we view a cell phone as a method of communication, primarily our generation does, but it's also an organizational tool, and it can be an educational tool. But it's also a method of recording candid events with or without permission for the personal viewing of the person recording or the public posting. As I said, I do not have an opinion about this. I just know that when I asked parents and students that are in my social circle what they thought about it, I couldn't get any further than posing the question before they would respond with, so this is what they're voting on when we have X, Y, and Z going on. So I never really could get an opinion from an adult because they saw other things as being more important. When I talked to adolescents, my own daughters and others, their first concern was privacy. They know that pictures are taken in the hallways now, videos are taken in the hallways now, classrooms, locker rooms. It's not just athletic events and music events or social events. And they are concerned about what would be posted without their permission and what would be the social and emotional consequences. I just, since Monday, learning about this, have done a little bit of research on the web, and there are scholarly articles about the impact on test scores. There are scholarly articles about the changes in social interaction, both at the high school and the college level. I work in the public school system myself, and I think about the idea of how quickly the horizon has changed with smartphones being in the hands of children as young as the average is 10, but as young as 6 for a variety of reasons. I just would hope that the board, prior to taking a vote, would have deep discussion about this and do some research about this, and most importantly, not rush to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Jacqueline Barner.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Jacqueline Barner. I'm 17. I go to school at Lincoln Way East. I'm a junior. I've heard a lot of mixed conversations about the 17 people in the 17 minutes outside of school. And I've actually have concerns about this because it's outside and it's been on media already. It's been talked through the halls. It's been on Snapchat taking pictures, and who knows who's seen this already. And I feel like kids being outside unprotected for a cause that's really big in our society and dealing with these events, it's scary to think about when you're in school and you don't know if it's going to be a safe day or not. And I know teachers don't really have the access to go outside with these students, but I'm just sorry, I'm nervous.
That's fine. Don't hurt.
The concerns of just how much protection we're going to have outside, and if there's any other possible way we can still participate in this peaceful protest without having the concerns of it being safe or not. Like if we can have it like inside or located in a different area of the school where it's not so open. I love the peaceful protest, but I'm concerned with the safety because I know safety is an issue, but how safe can we be about this? And I just don't want to have my fellow classmates be in a possible danger and have it repeat itself possibly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jacqueline, first of all, very mature stance. Thank you for coming out this evening. We've discussed this with our administrators. The administrators in each building have begun to talk to the individuals who are planning the peaceful protest. What we would like to do as we work with the students is to provide that safe environment inside our building. We're going to respect the right to free speech. Our teachers won't endorse or condone this either way, but I appreciate and respect your views on the safety aspect of having an exact time when every kid is going to walk out of the building. So that's something that as a student, and obviously your courage here would be appropriate for you to express those concerns with your classmates, as that I know Dr. Mahalik will provide a safe environment inside for this to occur. We have an institute next Friday, so we'll be talking with the teachers. They've already been getting different types of resources and materials, but our teachers will not condone nor endorse this peaceful protest. However, we will respect the rights of our students to do so. But I completely agree with you, Jacqueline, in terms of trying to keep it inside the building. So thank you for coming out. Be sure to see Dr. Mahalik about your concerns, and we'll continue to work with the students on this.
Okay, thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank you.
Shannon O'Shea.
Good evening, my name is Shannon O'Shea, and my concerns seem tied into what she just spoke about and at the same time trivial, but I will proceed anyway. Been a resident of Frankfurt 25 years, our 3 children raised here, all 3 graduated from East since 1999. Been a big part of East, volunteering there, all sorts of activities, even to the present day. Just had my granddaughters at the family swim on Sunday. I am a lap swimmer. I've been swimming laps 3 times a week at East since the day it opened, August 2001. I've utilized all the different schools when swimming pools are shut down. At this point, over the years, it's become more and more restricted due to budget concerns and other issues I may not be aware about. Right now, I swim twice a week at Central at 5:30 in the morning. It's a special program. There's just 12 of us. The doors are locked. Brian opens it only to us. The other times when I try and swim at East, it's either 7:30 or 8 in the morning. If you come in at 8, you can only enter at the front entrance. Your driver's license is scanned, you wear a pass, but you are walking through the school. And it just really struck me with her of seeing adults that they don't know who's walking through our school. But we do wear passes, and I know there's volunteers and other adults that aren't necessarily teachers. I mean, whatever needs to be done to protect the children in this climate and to assure them that the school's doing whatever it can. I'm 100% for that. I'm semi-retired. I do a little part-time substitute teaching. I underwent a criminal background check for that. I mean, whatever the board wants, just to make sure that we're down to, it feels like just a couple dozen people that are left swimming. And it's minutes from my house. We have a family membership at a gym, but it doesn't have a pool. And it's just become such a happy routine. I've been going there for so long. I understand if it doesn't work out, but I'm hoping there might be some way, just with minimal adjustments, you know, the few people that are left swimming. Betty's here is another person that swims, been doing it for years. So just asking the board to consider if there needs to be tighter security, to have public come in during school hours, all for it. And I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that sign up? That would like to speak on this? Okay, if not, we'll move into our agenda then. We do have a very short consent agenda tonight. We have one out-of-state travel that was in your package. I'd ask if anybody want any of the items pulled and discussed separately. Since there is only one item, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. Vote please, Linda.
Mr. Janik?
Aye.
Ms. Janice Doyle?
Aye.
Mr. Lulo?
Aye.
Mr. Kirby?
Aye.
Yes.
All right. Next on our agenda is the update of the 5CAS financial projections.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here tonight to present to the Board of Education the updated year financial forecast. Please feel free to jump in, stop me anywhere along the way. Better this is interactive than just scripting. So the 5-year financial forecast, or what we commonly call the 5CAS, is a comprehensive interactive planning tool the district uses for budget development, process, tax levy determination, and just general planning. It's an interactive planning model based on hundreds of assumptions that affect the model's output. As you know, the longer the planning horizon, the less certain the results will be, as events that affect the district's financials are always changing and evolving. This interactive planning tool can be used to develop what-if scenarios based on changes in assumptions. We will look at 4 different assumptions here tonight, which we would call our kind of best case, worst case, and a pension shift. But others could be developed as we move forward. As you know, the 5CAS is not a static document that will remain unchanged. In fact, it's practically outdated already before we even get a chance to present it. The basic elements that are used to develop the projections are listed here on the slide and are provided to PMA that loads them into the 5CAS software. Please note that the charts and graphs will focus mainly on operational funds only, which are education, operations and maintenance, transportation, Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, working cash, and tort. It excludes debt service and capital projects unless otherwise labeled as all funds. The software has 2 major calculators that are uses historical data and current inputs assumptions to calculate 73% of all the revenue and 74% of all expenditures. The remaining revenue and expenditures are adjusted or modified by manual input based on the appropriate assumptions, for example, student fees. One of the major building blocks to the forecast is the district's current budget. This here, as you can see, is a graphical representation of the current operating funds, which you can see 73% of our district resources come from property taxes. The district levies 2 types of taxes. Operating levy, which is capped by the property tax extension limit law, and the debt service, which is not tax capped. The PTEL, the property tax extension limit law, limits the increase of our operating tax levy to the lesser of 5% or the consumer price index as of the prior December on the tax and the tax on new property, or what we call new property growth. For example, the 2017 tax levy was based on the December 2016 CPI of 2.1. The debt service tax levy is set as part of the bond referendum and is automatically levied unless abated by the Board of Education. Here is the single biggest revenue assumption in the model, which is the consumer price index. For fiscal year 18, the district will rely on 50% of the 2016 tax levy, which was set in October 2016, and 50% of the 2017 tax levy, which has not yet been finalized by the county, but was estimated on the 2.1%. Listed on the screen is the actual CPI for the last 9 levy years, which is the green bars. And the assumptions built into the model, which are the yellow models. The orange model, or orange bars, I'm sorry, are the Wall Street Journal estimates that were made at the time by 25 different economists. The blue lines going forward are those economists' future projections for CPI. You can see here that they didn't do too bad of a job in projecting that. Here is the second largest, which is the growth for new property. Historically, you can see the green bars there. The district back in 2010 had 65 million and then had another peak in 2016 of 62 million. Early estimates from the Will County are indicating we should get around 51 point some million. Let's see if this actually works. Right there, 51 million in new growth this coming year. We are projecting 50 million of new growth moving out in future years in the model.
Can I jump in
Yep.
on that one? What was that additional 12 million from 15 to 16 attributed to? Was there some big
I have-
projects in the area?
Yes, I have myself not actually researched this, but I have talked with another individual that has looked into this, and he indicated that it was mostly a commercial bump. So not to probably be expected, you know, since it was a big piece of property. This here represents the district's total equalized value, where you can see back in 2008, the district hit a peak of 4.08 billion. Yes, that's B with billion with a B, $1 billion in equalized assessed value. And if the continued growth or recovery continues to happen, we'd expect to exceed that by 2019. This is, and I want to make sure, this is total tax levy that I'm showing here, which includes debt service. And this is our estimated tax extension in millions. This is a graphic, a bar graph of that same, well actually tax rate, in which you can see our tax rate is actually for operating kind of flattening and declining slightly, even though our total tax dollars collected are estimated to increase, and that is to do with the strengthening equalized assessed value. And then you can see also slight of an increase in there as our debt service is projected to increase if we do not refinance any bonds. Other revenue assumptions for local revenue have been adjusted. The main one is our CPPRT, or corporate personal property tax. That's been adjusted down based on early estimates from the Department of Revenue. And otherwise, all other projections are based on the current budgets. State and local revenue, state and federal revenue. The state revenue has been adjusted to reflect the new funding formula, the evidence-based funding. Now, the state is still in the process of calculating out what a current claim would be. So at this point, we're still based on the FY17 hold harmless rate, but that has been increased in there. And finally, other state grants, we're just left at the 18 level, unless we, like transportation aid, we already know that's going to be down just slightly, so we adjusted that down. And then finally, federal revenue is just based on current allocations that we've been notified of. Operating revenue in millions, here graphically displayed. We have, as you can see, local, state, and federal. As mentioned earlier, local is our largest portion and will account for about 89% of our total revenue. We're expecting total operating revenue by 2023 to be right at 99.3 million. Sensitivity analysis. As I mentioned earlier, you can do literally thousands of what-if scenarios on basically every variable within the thing. While it's not prudent to run all those, what it is prudent is to understand how each of the variables affect the model. These are the largest ones that we have within the model. So as you can see here, consumer price index, if it increases or decreases by 1%, then it'll have a $622,000 adjustment. So let's say as we've shown here, we're estimating that our tax or CPI is 2%. Well, what happens if it comes in at 3%? Well, we would get $622,000 more. New property growth, for each $1,000 in new property, we get about $17,000, so plus or minus if we're on that. And then finally, any prorating on the evidence-based funding model, which they historically prorated GSA, that's about $52,000. Just as with the revenue, expenditures, the biggest building block is the actual current budget. This is a graphical representation of our district's current budget. And as you can see, whoops, and as you can do,
Just skip over it.
there you go. As you can see here, salaries and benefits represent 74% of the district's expenditures. All right, expenditure assumptions. All salary and benefit assumptions are based on actual individual contracts for the current and adjusted for known retirees, historical changes, and or other or as determined by the Board of Education. So we have there, you can see the current contracts and the ones we're working on. Health insurance is flat and then increases at 3% moving forward. Staffing level, I will bring this. We are estimating a -2 FTEs for fiscal year 19 and an additional -3 for 2020 and then flat thereafter. This is a graphical representation of our estimated expenditures for operation by 2023. Under these assumptions, we'd expect to be at $94.53 million. Based on this same information we just reviewed, here is a breakdown between the salaries and benefits based on that staffing change and those aforementioned increases. And you can see we're estimating that our salaries and benefits combined reach about $67 million by 2023. Additional assumptions. Within the model, we're projecting within the base model, or what I'm going to call this what we're reviewing here, our most likely scenario, we expect to see no changes in the evidence-based funding formula or in the PTEL property tax limitation. We're not projecting anything like property tax freeze or of the such. Any known retirees have been replaced with a person at an MA step 6. And then we, of course, based on working budget as being accurate. All right, so this is a graphical representation of the district's projected expenditures by their major classification. So salaries and benefits, purchase services, supplies, capital, other, and then non-capital. As you can see, we're expecting to reach about $94.5 million by 2023 for operating funds. Same way with revenue same way with expenditure as revenue, we do a sensitivity analysis. For each 1% change in salary, that's about $533,000 in additional cost. And for each 1% change in health, life, and dental, that's the $68,000. These are the two largest variables within the model. This is an eye test chart. No. This has been included in your packets because obviously it's very difficult to read at this distance. But within your packets, they're each individual pro forma, which then are aggregated into a final projection summary, which is displayed here on the board.
For the total other financial sources uses, it's a negative $172,000 this year. Is that correct?
Yeah. So
what is in that?
Yes. Let me address that. If we were using the all funds chart, then this would actually zero out because you would have a transfer in and a transfer out. But since we're looking at only the operation funds, per state law, you cannot pay debt service payments or lease payments from any operating funds. It has to be paid from your debt service fund, Fund 30. That is the transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 30 to pay those payments. If we had all funds, you would see the corresponding transfer in, which would show a positive 117, and it'd be netted out to be zero.
So for 2021, we don't have anything there now. It's at zero because
this is our scheduled last payment to be paid. So the only exception, and this is just because of transportation aid, you can pay bus leases out of Fund 40. That's the only fund that you can pay a lease out of besides 30. So Yeah, so this is some payments on computers, and that will be paid off at the end of that year. Okay, you can see here, we're projecting surpluses, and here's beginning fund balances. As you'll note here, I have to look at my paper here, but you can see here, we were $256,000 in the hole at the beginning of 18, and at the end of 18, if we have the surplus, this is not including the $4.5 million in projected land sales, but we'd still be looking to that 3.4 million, and bringing us to a just over $3 million surplus by the end. So you can see all the numbers there. Let's look at this more graphically. That'll be a little easier. So here's revenue versus expenditures. So you can clearly see from 18 through 23, under this what we call most likely scenario, we're projecting to have a surplus during those years. This here, now this is a slight different from what was posted on the web page, and I apologize for that, but every time you update the model, you have to manually go in and adjust some variables for the blue line to calculate out your cash low point correctly. So if you're looking on the web page, that purple line is going to look a little better. That's to do with adjusting for a cash basis. So anyway, you can see here, right here was our absolute low point in fund balance in 16. We had our first surplus in 17 to bring us almost out of the negative, and by 18 we hope to actually have a positive operating fund balance. Now for some people they might say, well, how is that possible? The district have a negative fund balance. Well, remember, we have two restricted funds, debt service and capital projects. They both have funds in there, and then of course we're borrowing a maximum of $27 million to make payroll between those tight parts. So anyway, here's our low projected cash flow. You see right there, we're projecting to be about $23 million short in 18, and then 19 all the way, if these go to fruition, we'd be about $8.5 million short by 2023.
Right, once again, this doesn't include the sale of the land.
No, this does not include the 4.5 million sale. This is just the projected 5 years, so it just shows that same graph, it just cuts off those prior histories. This here is the projected surplus for the operating funds that was in that little report that was difficult to read. And this here is our estimated ending fund balance. Now I just want to point out that if all that went as planned, by 2023 we would have a fund balance of about 23% of operating expenses. The board's goal is 33%. Okay, so now let's talk about one of the first worst case scenarios. And that would be a pension cost shift as proposed by Governor Rauner. This chart here represents the difference between our TRS. Well, this is actually total benefits, but the only thing that's changed, all assumptions on benefits were held the same, with the exception of he is proposing that 2.5% of the TRS pension payment be shifted annually to the school district. So that's 2.5 first year, 5% second year, 7.5. You get clear to 10%, which is what the state says they're currently paying. So this difference here is made up of that TRS additional payment. In the next 5 years, if that shift was to happen, it would cost the district $25.1 million. So what's that do to us? Well, it basically undoes everything we've been working to do. So if we did nothing, if we didn't make any changes, if we didn't make cuts, if we just went ahead with operations as I showed you, we would immediately start burning into a deficit until our fund balance would be back down negative $3.2 million by fiscal 2023, and we'd be borrowing about $33 million. That's if we could get somebody to loan it to us. I think the important message here is if you happen to be speaking to any of your legislators, which I wish one of them was here at last meeting, I wish we were here tonight, you might just mention to them that a pension cost shift for a district of our district would be pretty detrimental. This is just showing the fund balance and what would happen in the last 5 years. Now let's take even a worst case scenario. Let's say that that 2% CPI is too high and we really should use the average of the last 10 years. Well, the CPI for the last 10 years average is 1.62%. So we built a scenario based on that. Now, here's the Wall Street Journal assumptions, and as you can see, they've not been too bad. So this doesn't seem much like a likely scenario, but we ought to look at it. So with looking at that, it just makes it even worse, and it brings down, we lose another $2.17 million worth of revenue, bringing our overall loss to the fund balance of $27.3 million. So it brings us down to $5.4 million.
Can you go back to the slide for there? So you mentioned the Wall Street Journal estimates in your,
Yes,
they throw out a little bit of rainbows and unicorns on it there for me. How often do they adjust their estimate?
That's an interesting question. I could research that. Every time I just go to the web page and they just got up forecasts out there. Because like right now they're forecasting clear out to 2021. And so, I mean, but to ask the question, these numbers are what they projected at the time I put them into the presentations.
Right, but I mean, I guess my point is, when was their last estimate?
Yeah, so
created?
this estimate right here was made about 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago.
So these can adjust.
Right, yeah, and I'll keep adjusting. I mean, I keep these future out ones, I'll keep adjusting those as we go and, you know, kind of keep an eye on that. So, that answer the question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that those estimates could come down. just
Right,
as easily as they
right.
go up.
Right.
They're just
And
that, they're estimates.
They're exactly right, they're just estimates. Okay, so the 1.62, that is the 10-year average. You don't see it on the slide, but what really pulls that down is just right back there, if it was on the slide, remember we had the 0.1. So that was quite an anomaly, but it was out there, so it really pulls down that 10-year average. So based on that, putting in a CPI of 1.62, it decreases the revenue by another $2.17 million. The total loss between either additional expenditure or lost revenue, a total change on the fund balance of $27.3 million over the 5 years. Would bring us down to needing about $35 million in cash. And that's just a graph of that. Okay, so kind of, if you will, the base model is kind of like what we think will be. This is like, okay, what's our best case scenario? So this would be no pension shift, no change in legislation, and really a higher CPI. So if we had a higher CPI at this, what the Wall Street Journal is currently projecting, how much would that really shift our model? Well, what it would do, it would shift our model by $1.5 million, an additional revenue above that kind of most likely scenario I showed you. So now we're by 2023 we might only need to borrow about $7.3 million, and we'd have about $23 million in the fund balance. And that's just a representation of that. With that, I'd open it up for questions. In your board packets was a reconciliation. I know you guys asked for it last time. So it reconciles the base model for 2019 to the 2018. And this would be the piece of information that we'd like to discuss when we move to the next agenda item, which would be kind of giving us our marching orders for getting started on the 2019 budget. Of course, we'll just get that built. We'll come back to the board in May, review it all, discuss it all, and bring it back in August for a final look, and then look to the board to adopt that in September. So this is just broad parameters for us to get started working on. So any questions on the 5-year financial report before we go on?
So last time we saw the 5-cast was in October? roughly?
Yes, October. Yep.
And how would you compare this presentation to that presentation? Was it progressive, conservative, about the same?
Well, the biggest thing would be is, of course, evidence-based funding is helping out. We're getting more revenue there. But as far as CPI, we actually decreased the CPI from that projection. In there, we were using, I think, 2.1 or 2.1, I think it was. We lowered it. The biggest was we had higher new growth. If you remember, we were thinking that new growth of 60-some million was going to continue because of all the housing permits and et cetera. Well, that turned out that was mostly that bump in commercial. So really our true baseline is probably about that 50 million. So that's the single biggest adjustment within. And then that's on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, pretty much the assumptions are pretty much all the same, except for now that we've had a tighter look at our enrollment, we do have in there for a couple, -2 teachers in 19 and -3 in 20. That's really the big changes in it since from October.
When will the 2017 new growth be finalized? When will you have that as a real number?
April. So it should be by mid-April when they will finalize it for us. But the 51-some million, I doubt that's going to change much. Yeah,
So they changed from the estimate they gave us initially.
Yeah.
To a fairly significant
Yeah,
decline.
yeah. So we'll get that final number in April.
And then this 5-cast, does it include the need to fund the capital improvement?
Yes.
In the 10-year plan that we discussed at length last meeting?
Right.
About, so it does throw in the monies necessary out of operating to
Right.
replenish the capital.
Right, so now we have two ways we can handle that going forward, and that'll be kind of a board discussion we can have during the budgeting process. We can transfer, because right now we have earmarked in there $3 million in O&M.
Beginning when?
Huh?
Beginning when?
19, fiscal year 19. So we have that earmarked in there for that capital plan. We can either expend that capital plan out of O&M and just leave the money there, or we could transfer to 60 and then we could make those expenditures, and then if something got delayed or whatever, well, the money's still there, then whatever. So that would just be a board discussion we'll have during our budget process, because we'll need to prepare the budget appropriately, you know, how we want to do that. So we'll bring back a recommendation in May with the budget development. But yes, it includes $3 million starting in fiscal year 19 to make those ongoing repairs.
You mentioned refinancing the bonds. When would the earliest, or is that anywhere on the horizon for us?
Well, it's on the horizon for me on one aspect, and that is getting our rating higher. We have next week a rating call with Moody's, and we're working on a presentation now for them. Until that rating is back up in at least the A or AA, you know, we're not really going to put a lot of energy in. Our energy right now is on daily operations and getting that rating up.
But having answered the question, get the rating up, when is going to be the first opportunity to refinance the bond?
Oh, I would have to look at that. I don't have that right off the top of my head, but it's a little bit out. So, but yes, there are some opportunities out there that we need to talk with. You know, the process would be is I would first want to go through an RFP process. The board wanted to get that rolling, we could do it, but then we need to select an independent financial advisor who can just advise us only on how we should or shouldn't restructure. And of course, not letting them have anything to do with underwriting. Should be completely separate, and I think we should do a request for proposal for that service.
In the operating funds, it just caught my eye. What was this may be too detailed of a question, so I apologize if I didn't get a chance to ask you ahead of time. Between fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20, there was a 4% bump in expenditures, but everything else was pretty steady at about a 2.1.
Right.
Any idea what that might have been?
Yeah, so that's the bringing on of the $3 million to fund. See, we've been funding that out of, see, if that wouldn't show up like that if we were looking at it all funds.
Okay.
You know, but when you isolate to operating, see that $3.some million has been in Fund 60, which is a reserve fund capital projects. So that's why.
Again, I appreciate your efforts on this.
Oh, no
The first
problem.
time we did this to where we are now, I think we're given different case scenarios. It's a better map.
And we will continue to get better and better with it. Okay, well then, I don't have my agenda in front of me, but I believe the next item was the,
That's why the question.
yes, so in your information was this reconciliation for revenue and expenditures from the budget from 18 budget to 19 projections. This is what the dollars we have in there for the 19 projections is where we feel comfortable on the revenue side, where we think we will be hitting. And then if you flip it over to the expenditure side, you'll see there the list of things that we need to do to bring together the fiscal year 19 budget. So we're going to be adding, and I apologize, $2 million in capital projects. And then we have salary and benefit increases of estimated of about $1 million. And you see the list there. Those are the things that we would need to build into the 19 budget as we bring forward a detailed budget for the board's consideration in May. This is really just our big global building blocks. It's not like I personally don't feel like we need to vote on this. This is just getting it started. The board will officially vote on this as we bring together all the details and bring it back for your consideration. So this is where we'd like to start off and start building the budget.
So we're going to be talking about security concerns next, I believe. In this global view, are we considering those maybe additional costs in this model right here?
Well, it depends on which and where we go, but if we're talking about like some of the secured access and some of that stuff, that is already built into,
Right.
yes.
I'm talking maybe like
Keys and
something
cameras,
additional
yes.
or something along those lines.
Yes, they're built in, and we will discuss that.
Okay. I just didn't want to see this and then we just jump ahead and jump. Those numbers are all changing next week. Add some more. And as far as interest expense, that's going down because of the interest rate, I'm assuming? Or the
What is that? Oh, yeah, the TAW interest? Yes, that's going down because by the time we already had the budget set before we negotiated our TAWs this last time. It's actually went down for 18, but we had already set the budget before we negotiated that. So as you know, we got a substantially better rate on our TAWs this year. So that's why that's going down for 19. Okay, well, the important thing about this is this is just the big building blocks. We will bring back the actual individual detailed budget for the board as we move along. We'll be back in May, and then we're looking for final adoption in September.
Appreciate the time, Scott.
School security. And a quick switch over. Thank you, sir. Just to keep me on track. Okay, we did provide some backup materials in the packet. I apologize, most of this was placed today after we held our meeting this morning. So first of all, we did hold a security committee meeting this morning. The participants in the meeting were the 3 building principals, the 3 associate principals, director of personnel, director of buildings and grounds, Deputy Lithgow, our school resource officer, Lieutenant Hayes, who's Will County Lieutenant, who oversees our resource officers, as well oversees the SWAT team in Will County, Board Member Lulo, and myself. This is a superintendent's committee that came out of the strategic planning. These meetings, because we're dealing with internal security, are not open to the public. These were the members who attended today, and I'm going to go through some of the items that were discussed that are able to be discussed in public. To start off, we'll reference policy 4.170, which is our operational services, our safety policy. In here, all district operations shall be conducted in a manner that will provide the safety and security of everyone on district property. We've cut and pasted that policy for you in your backup materials. So as we begin, what is currently in place? We have plans for emergencies in all 3 of our schools. So in addition to 3 fire drills and 1 severe weather drill, the schools conduct an active shooter drill that is coordinated with our first responders. There is a debrief and review at the conclusion of that year. Each year adjustments are made. Those plans continue to evolve as more information becomes available. Ron Lulo was able to attend this past fall at Lincoln Way Central to witness that drill. Will County is always involved in that drill. Often we have Frankfurt involved at Lincoln Way East and New Lenox involved here at Central and at West. We discussed the use of panic buttons in our meeting today. Panic buttons are located in each classroom. This is a two-way communication. Someone hits the buzzer in the classroom, immediately one of the office staff picks up the phone. Can I help you? The response is, I have a student who's fainted. I have this, I have that. At that point, we have immediate access to the intercom to make an announcement. Now, we talked about the scenarios today. One that could be an awful scenario. Teacher hits the panic button. Yes, can I help you? I see a man with a gun outside of room 200. The announcement is immediately made. There's a man with a gun outside of room 200. The building is now in lockdown. Further discussion today, we were given the instruction from Will County, say as much as you can on that announcement. There is a man outside. He is wearing there's a man outside room 200 in a gray sweatshirt. The police have been called. They are on their way. With that, the more notification, the more likely that person may be to flee, or in the scenario that was given to us this morning, take their own life. So we discussed the messaging to the teachers and the student response. The police would be en route. Now, in my time as superintendent, we've had a couple situations that have involved our first responders. We had one at Lincoln Way Central, where an individual was seen walking towards the building. Someone called 911, feeling that they'd seen a shiny object in the person's hand that appeared to be a gun. New Lenox was here immediately. Their response was immediate. Will County was right behind. All officers were in the building, prepared to do their jobs. I have no doubt that they were willing to risk their own lives to save lives of our students. We had a situation at Lincoln Way East a couple of years ago where we had an active threat during the school day. Same scenario. Will County deputies were inside our building, in the hallways. Will County deputies were outside monitoring the entire exterior based upon the possibility of that threat. Their diligence and their commitment, there's no question they were there to do their jobs. And so for that, I'm very grateful. Our response time of our officers in these communities has been excellent in the 2 instances that we've had to make those calls. We continue to utilize Raptorware and hold identification of individuals who come into our building. So if you come in, as mentioned this evening, we run the ID, we run the background check, they get a sticker, they get a lanyard, they can come through our buildings, we hold on to the ID, when they come back, they sign out, we give them that card. Now, some discussion today going forward. There was discussion of cameras. We have cameras throughout our buildings. We have cameras stationary on the doors that have locks block access to enter our buildings. But we had discussion of would we be able to grant access to Will County through our firewalls if they were en route, if they were at the station. The lieutenant and Deputy Hillary believe that it's most effective if they're able to utilize our camera system while in their vehicles. They all have laptops in their vehicles. So we're looking for ways with our provider to determine if that is a viable option. We know we can likely get it to their landline. We have to make sure that by doing this with 2 or 3 users at the same time, it wouldn't slow the system down. If they were to come into our buildings in an emergency, they would likely go to the main office point of contact and begin to utilize that equipment. But there could be a benefit to them having that in their cars. Now, it's important to note, every Will County deputy has blueprints of all of our schools in their squad cars on their computer. They're able to pull it up immediately as they're listening. Door 9, door 9. They're looking at their map, they're seeing door 9, they know where to enter. So that is in place. Over the summer, last board meeting, our board approved a capital projects plan that would include secure entrances. So this will be done over the summer or sooner. We're in the pre-construction meetings now. We're seeing if we could have some of this work done prior to the completion or the conclusion of the school year. So we'll do what we can do. These would be cameraed secure entrances in all 3 buildings, such as you see in our grade schools. Buzz through, camera, can I help you? Give the reason, come to the next door. Now, the procedures have been developed, but we're finalizing the details in terms of who gets through the door, who doesn't. At this point, you have to have an appointment or have a reason. If a student's sick, the nurse calls to the main office. Billy's sick, the parent's on the way. Parent calls in ahead of time to say, I'm going to pick up Joey for the orthodontist. So we're finalizing those details, and we'll have those in place for the start of the next school year. In addition to our secure entrances, there will be access controls to all outside entrances of our building and then other specific parts of our building. These will be swipe cards. Swipe cards can be activated and deactivated. You can't deactivate a key. Once you have a key, you have a key. And so all exterior entrances would be only accessed through our swipe cards. That will help to secure our building. The next one is restricted use and restricted access. That was the first thing that was discussed at the meeting, and everyone was in agreement. This is not only a safety concern, but also a liability concern. The district is responsible for the individuals while they're in the building. You know, the administration is prepared to move forward with limiting the access to community members during the school day, during times when students are present. We still have swim hour availability in the evenings. We have Park District lap walking available in the evenings. So the administration would be prepared to move forward with limiting access throughout the school day. I believe in the board policies of 4170, the administration is to develop those plans. I, over the next couple of weeks, will be in conversation with board members we didn't have time to do this as the meeting was today, but we'll have discussions individually. But at this point, the administration would be prepared to move forward to limit the access, particularly based upon the discussions with law enforcement and the administration in the meeting today. In just a minute, we can discuss that. The other item that came out of our meeting today, and this is something the principals have been working on, is monitored student entrances before the start of school. We all know we have a number of doors for our buildings, and so we are in the process of going down to 3 doors in the morning. We would set the time that those doors are open in the morning, and then they would be monitored by staff. We still want freedom of movement. We still want our students to feel safe, and I think that by working to close certain doors, restrict certain access, that's one way to tighten up our security a little prior to the start of school. So that's something that in the Friday morning meeting tomorrow, we'll finalize, we'll get schedules out, and that's something we can start right away. A little bit on prevention. I attached the principal's letters that have been sent home or will be sent home, and then we have a new reporting tool. We've had the bullying form on our website for quite some time now. That bullying form is now a bullying school safety form, and so it's something that, I don't know if my link will work, it probably won't. But it's accessible, it's on our website, it's up and running, and it's something that we will be sharing with our students, and the link will be sent home to the parents. It has drop-down boxes of what their concern may be. It includes suicide, threat of harm to others, threat of harm to school, bullying. Those emails, when that's submitted, that email goes immediately to the principal, the associate principals, and also the director of PPS. So there will be 4 individuals that get that email. Our individuals check their emails regularly. We will be able to respond immediately. Now, Mr. Kaufman found it, so there it is, Lincoln Way Bully Safety Report. And that's something that, as I said, will be shared with parents and with students in the upcoming days. Okay, a lot to cover. Any questions or thoughts? I know, Ron, you've been very involved in this.
Yeah. First off, Mrs. O'Shea, I definitely heard what you were saying. Also received some emails and some phone calls from some people. Back in 2006, this was the literature that was put out to the public saying, if you endorse and allow us to use the schools, we'll support the referendum. And I understand a lot of that was sold to you by former administration. The downside of it is, looking through statistics from January 2006 to today, I did a Google search, there was 180 school shootings. Times have changed, and we have an obligation to the entire community, but to the 7,000 or so students, the 850 teachers and support staff, and not that the 75 to 100 or so people that use the facilities throughout the day, non-school related, aren't important. But we have an obligation, I think, to the masses. And decisions are never easy. Someone always benefits, someone, if you will, loses. But I think it's something we really have to consider, and unfortunately the time and age in which we live in.
So let's talk a little bit about that. You mentioned that prior to the referendum, did the community have access to the schools?
Well, it takes me a long way back. I know in the 90s they did. And when the field houses were completed, I know that we allowed our residents to walk during the field house, because I remember coaching at the time, and the fear of if a ball goes bouncing and somebody goes after it, people could be injured and harmed. So I know as early as 1996 there was walking in the field houses. That was prior to the swimming pools.
So this has been kind of a practice of the district for over 20 years? Is that fair to say?
Correct.
So how did that come into being? Was it just somebody snuck in and started walking on the track one day?
That predates me.
Can you do some research on that?
I can.
To find out, because I think, I agree with everything Ron said. I totally agree with it. But before we do anything, I think we need to fully vet how we got there, what we're doing, and what.
And I know back in the, if it started in the 80s or 90s, it was prior to what we're experiencing.
I'm the first one to tell you that we live in a different world.
I would respectfully disagree with you, Joe. I would say we can go ahead and restrict access now, and if we want to reopen it, we can always reopen it, but just continuing to let things operate the way they are, allowing people to come in with bags, walking around while our students are here, I think is not too prudent. So, but that I'll disagree with.
You mentioned, Ron, there was a number of how many people use it. Is that
It's fewer than 100. So we
on a daily basis, or how
yeah, district-wide daily basis, we're at about 15 to 20 per building. And that's a number the principals had given me.
you mentioned liability. What is the liability?
Liability, if anything were to happen to those individuals while they're,
Those individuals.
so the citizens, community members, something happens to a community member, that's on us. It's in our building, it's on our time. Certainly if a community member or any individual coming through were then to do any harm or damage, once again, I believe that liability would be on us. You know, my fear, and we've discussed this, is always, as we have members of our community walking, you know, that's when athletic contests are going on, big kids running around. It's always been a fear that injuries would occur. We've been very fortunate. We did have a lady hit with a softball this morning. You know, they're running the track while we're taking grounders. I wish that our kids would catch everyone, but they miss occasionally, and one did hit one of our walkers this morning. And you know, so something to consider, certainly.
Does our insurance carrier know that we allow access? Is that something that they're aware of?
They do.
What do they say about it?
We haven't ever delved in to see if that would be a cost savings or not.
But the people are covered.
It would be covered by our insurance. We would still pay the deductible. Yeah, it's no different than people attending a softball or basketball game. We have hundreds of thousands throughout a year.
All right, so I'm a little confused.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll be obtuse here.
Yes.
So is this a policy or is this an administration decision?
If you read the policy itself, the policy designates the superintendent or designee to develop, implement, and maintain a safety and security plan that includes without limitation all the emergency. So the way I would read this is that it's up to the administration to determine what that safety and security policy would be. There is a policy that restricts use of organizations and groups during the school time, but it does not state citizens or individuals. It's outside groups, organizations, not be done during school time. So while not allowed groups or organizations here during school time, individuals have been allowed. And that's policy 8 something, I think.
1.20.
So we could amend that policy to include
You
individuals?
could amend that policy to include individuals, correct?
And that might be a cleaner way to do it?
That would be.
Although this says prevention of emergency operations by addressing prevention.
Correct.
So preventing emergency situations, I think, may fall under.
Speaking with our principals, speaking with our SROs, having individuals walking around the building with bags during times that schools are there is their concern. And that was the discussion this morning. And as I said, I apologize we didn't have time to discuss that individually.
So this was an informational item.
This is an information.
So what information am I leaving here tonight with?
Tonight? Well, I would think it would be fair for me to communicate with the board members between now and our next meeting. We know all the individuals that use our facilities on an everyday basis. The recommendation of the security committee, the recommendation of the 3 principals would be for us to restrict the use during time the students are present. That's what I would like to do. Now, I'm certainly not going to go against the wishes of board members, but at the same time, I do believe the policy in reading today would allow the administration that opportunity to do so. Certainly then, discussions can be had in terms of moving forward. At this point, we have 2 weeks before our next meeting. We can leave things as is for 2 weeks as we continue to discuss this. We can review the policy 8.20 in terms of individuals. But that's certainly something we could do. We know the individuals that are currently using our facilities. We could restrict any additional usage during that time. But at the same time, we would be comfortable saying, let's take a 2-week break and come back and see where we would be in 2 weeks.
When you say restrict additional usage, are you saying only allow those folks
that have already signed up and gone through Raptorware? Yes. So we're talking about, as I said, 15 to 20 per building. We have nearly 7,000 students. And my responsibility is to the 7,000 students as we worked through this today. So My opinion would be we move forward and restrict access to the building during school hours. We provide swim hours in the evening. We provide park district opportunities starting at 6 o'clock in all of our buildings. There's still the opportunity to utilize our facilities.
So, I don't mean.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Joe, I understand, I understand.
First of all, when did the Florida incident occur? It was Valentine's. I knew the answer. So why did this happen on February 15th?
We scheduled a meeting. A meeting was scheduled for yesterday, Joe.
But I mean,
So if it's a timing issue, as I said, we can wait 2 weeks.
well,
That's when everyone was able to get at one place
I mean,
and have
we're
this.
we're also missing a decent chunk of our board tonight
We
for
are.
a variety of reasons.
We are.
I'm not being critical of that at all, and I can appreciate that. But I think that this is a delicate subject.
It's very delicate.
I am all for not putting a single person at risk, period. You and I have had that
Sure,
discussion.
absolutely.
The day that it occurred,
Absolutely.
and we've had it multiple times after.
Yes.
I'm struggling with this, is trying to figure out if we fully vetted what other options may be available if we decide to suspend this. And I don't feel we've done that at this point.
Other options, meaning,
I don't know, maybe there's a pre-registration type of a scenario, or something else that can occur that would allow it to be maintained in some semblance. Maybe not necessarily during the school day.
So after school.
Or before, I don't know. See, that's my,
Yeah, and
this popped up like today.
Sure it did, absolutely.
And so, I was under the impression it was going to be an informational discussion,
Yes.
not a change in practice.
Absolutely.
And I'm still not sure who can change the practice either.
Yeah.
Mr. President, if I
Yeah,
could.
please.
As much as I respect you and Mr. Lucetti when you guys are talking financial and that's your profession, for 35 years, both in public and private sector, this is my forte. And if we follow what's already in place, because we can't take action items because it's not on the agenda, but if we follow what's in place for the next 2 weeks until March 15th, if we were wrong or remiss in this, nothing really has changed. They've missed 2 weeks, and we're just temporarily suspending it until we come to the next board meeting, when hopefully more are here.
But we are not doing anything.
The policy's already in place, we don't have to do anything.
Right, I guess that's my point. You
Right.
said we, I might want to make sure I understand who we you're referring to.
Well, what I'm saying is, we don't, all we have to do is adhere to the policy that's already in print. Follow what's there. And if we do that, then we can restrict them. If we want
You
to
mean
change,
administration?
if we want to, but if we want to amend 8.20 and do that, we can do that at the 15th, once we vet it and once we have a formal discussion.
So your point is, thank you for your conversation, but,
Okay.
which I appreciate.
So you're saying we have a policy in place, the administration follows a policy it is what it is.
So then what you're basically saying, the administration was violating the policy, or the administration has the ability to take action within the policy.
I didn't say that, Joe. You did.
No, I know, that's why I put it in the
Yes,
form of
thank you.
like. So which was it? They have the ability to take additional action because of the policy?
Absolutely. It's there in writing, so yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, again, they just,
Oh, yeah.
just saw it, so. And then 2 weeks from now, you would come back to do what?
Well, if 8.20 is too loose and we need to tighten it up, then board action would be needed on an update or a better definition of that policy. And then if it is, then we could vet that and take board action if we needed to. But if not, then we could just leave everything as is and move forward.
there is no policy, and I found it interesting, there is no policy that allows access to the buildings. It's not, there's no board policy that says this is going to happen. We do have intergovernmental agreements with all of our park districts that allows community usage.
Here end up the informational discussion.
I rest.
I will rest as well.
May I ask a question about the form that Dr. Tingley put up? Can I do that now?
Please,
Yeah,
go ahead.
absolutely.
I appreciate the form and what you're trying to do with it. I have a junior at East who has been having pretty extensive conversations with us at home ever since Valentine's Day. And among her peers and other kids I've heard discussing this see something, say something policy, I have sort of two things. What happens if they see something and say something and this is reported? What's going to happen? I know two examples, one at West, where my understanding, wasn't on the inside, is because something was seen and said, action was taken and quite probably something prevented from happening. But I know myself, in talking with other community members, there's been incidents at Central and at East where maybe action hasn't been taken, things have been swept under the carpet, there's been no communication to the parents when the buildings have been surrounded by police. So I guess my question is twofold. What's your thought process about what will happen with these forms? And are you going to have a policy going forward in communicating with parents when there is a concern or even an incident with police presence at the schools?
Right. And first of all, in terms of sweeping under the rug, has never happened anywhere. Every time a report has been made, every single time a report
I mean
has
with
been
the
made,
parents.
every time a report has been made, it has been investigated by our administration in conjunction with our resource officers. Whenever there has been a threat made against the district, made against students, made against anyone, parents have been notified. Whenever a threat was made, whenever it was
Not last
substantiated.
year.
You can shake your head, ma'am. I'm telling you, every time something has occurred where a threat was made, something was in writing, something was on Facebook, something was seen, it has been communicated with parents.
I'm a parent and I wasn't communicated.
Well-
I communicated with the principal because I made a phone call.
Okay.
But
Well,
there was no
Once
communication in
again,
advance.
So I guess to answer your question, every time we receive one of those reports, it will be absolutely investigated to the nth degree. We receive emails from students. Occasionally, administrators receive emails from students. They act upon those immediately. They call the parents. If there's a child in danger or harm, our administration is excellent at following through on such items.
And obviously, I appreciate your comments, but we did kind of break protocol here, so if you want to carry that conversation on.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
It's obviously one that you need some additional.
I appreciate it.
One more, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I appreciate the things that you are already putting in place, especially having a conversation about what to do after a panic button is pushed and disseminating that information that could have an impact on the safety of the students. I'm wondering why would we wait if we could tomorrow start monitoring the student entrances and only having 3 doors open?
That's something that's already going to be started.
Okay.
It's gonna we're already on it.
We did indicate that
Yeah.
byproduct out of the meeting. That
Okay.
there were some things in this meeting that will obviously kick off and impact.
Yeah, there'll be a
And-
transition plan.
Does it have to wait till the summer to make the main entrance?
We're in pre-construction meetings right now.
Okay.
And so, to be honest, at Central and East, where there'll be quite a bit of work, we don't know that that will be possible because it deals with electricity, running wires, knocking down walls. But those conversations will be had with the construction company.
And the good news is that's already in process. So regardless if it happens this summer or
Certainly
this
happen.
spring, it's happening. One more question. I'm sorry, please go ahead.
I have 2 questions.
2 more questions.
Okay, I know you guys mentioned about Raptor Wear, going through background checks for those people. What about volunteers or former students who are coming back to help out? Are they going to also be checked on? Because, we just kind of assume that you're a parent, you're good to
No,
go.
our volunteers, assistant coaches, the like, they go through the background check for us.
What about parent volunteers?
Parent volunteers, if they're spending the night and they're chaperoning, yes.
Because
They go through the check.
like when we were at Summit Hill, we had to go through the background
State
check as well
police,
because
yes.
we were coming in the building.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that's the same thing. So will?
Yes, if they're in a supervisor capacity, we do. If
No,
they're
as long
coming-
as you come in the building, it's like to come and help in any,
We typically,
event.
I don't know that we have parents come and help.
fit
other than-
tuxes. Yes, I do. I
Fit
help
tuxes,
with.
yeah, if
You get
it's
what I'm saying?
Madrigals, if it's, you're right, they probably don't go through the background
They
check, but
should,
that's something
right?
we can look at.
Don't you think they should?
Yes, something we can look at. We could- Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a continuous improvement.
Yep.
Second question.
Fine.
North. I was walking the other day and I noticed that the gates to the football field was locked.
Mhm.
Can I ask why? Because there's no kids around?
That would have to go to the Franklin Square Park District, because I don't know.
Park
that we would've-
District?
Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
that we would have blocked those.
I could ask him. The
Yeah.
only thing was like, I'm a law-abiding citizen. So I didn't walk. I looked at the gates, it was locked, fine, walked away. Minutes later, I'm like, people are in the field, how the heck did they get in there? So after I walked by, I saw they pried the gates open. They squeezed through. These were adults who squeezed through. But I was like, what happens if some reckless kids and they climb the fence and
Sure.
they get injured? Then who's going to be liable?
That's a good point. Well, we can,
So something to think about,
Yep.
thank you.
you know?
Thank you.
That's all.
Well, no, appreciate the dialogue. I mean, this is obviously a very, very important topic.
Because you guys can be everywhere.
Right.
So
Well,
we are your
and-
eyes and ears as well.
The security subject is one that, as you can see, I mean, Ron, thank you. All I can say is we're very fortunate to have you as a member on this board, period, but especially during this time, because I know I've had conversations with you that have enlightened me as to how to go about this. And so I appreciate your efforts here. But this will be a dialogue that will have to continue. This is not going to be solved in one meeting. It's not going to be solved in a series of meetings. And as we found, it's regrettable that we have to plan for the unthinkable. And but yet we have to remember who we are as we do that, because this is us, and we got to be true to us as well. So that's my only cautionary tale to that, is that we keep that in mind. But this has been great dialogue on that, and I've learned tonight, so thank you. All right, is there any other business before this meeting? If not, there's no reason to go into closed session, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. There's a motion, is there a second?
Okay.
Second, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Meeting adjourned.